Hello, and welcome to my live. I am going to give you some examples of how we can know if childhood trauma is still affecting our adult lives now. Okay, these are all examples of things that used to happen for me that I have now healed from as well. So they're direct examples that I've lived as well. And what I would ask you to do is as I talk through these, even if you don't feel that you've had any sort of trauma experiences in life, just know that a lot of us actually can be running trauma symptoms, trauma responses, without necessarily knowing that we've had any sort of traumatic events. And that's because we don't necessarily kind of understand that, we can have trauma responses. Trauma energy can be locked in our body from those kind of seemingly smaller events in life as well. So if any of this resonates, just happily get in touch with me and we can talk through what's happening for you. But just sort of sit with it, just kind of go into this with an open mind, I guess I'm saying, so that you can kind of really benefit from spending that time just thinking about what may be happening for you. So the first one that I wanted to talk to you is about expressing and managing emotions. Okay, when we're kind of responding from that point of trauma, we can very often either have kind of really explosive emotions or do the complete opposite actually and really lock those down. So I've seen both examples, but expressing and managing emotions can be so scary to us as an adult based on our childhood experiences. We may have our emotional needs may have been completely ignored, and not necessarily in terms of anybody doing anything from sort of bad intent. We can lose that emotional connection as a child. Even when we're in a loving household, we can still lose that connection, and actually that can still create a trauma response for us. So there's no blame game here, is what I'm saying. But if you find it hard to express and manage your emotions, if you feel like confronting your emotions would actually be scary, I've seen that a lot. If you feel like your emotions are almost too big, if oh God, I hate this, but people, if people say to you, oh, you're overreacting or you're oversensitive, basically if anybody tells you you're doing anything too much, then walk in the opposite direction, because that's just, that's you, and that's where you are at that point in time. So 2 fingers up to them. But if you're in that space of expressing and not being able to express and manage your emotions, then, it's highly likely that there is some locked in, childhood trauma response, or there's a life experience that has happened to us within childhood that is then creating this problem for us in our adult lives now. Majority of things go back to our childhood. Everything that I work with my clients goes back to our childhood, and that's absolutely where all of my symptoms and issues came from as an adult. Went all the way back 2 decades to when I was a young child. So that's the first one. If you feel scared by your emotions, if you have been through something that is really traumatic, then absolutely you could be terrified, quite rightly, of going anywhere near your emotions, because you have learned to be terrified as a small child. You have learned real fear as a small child. So that is going to be a really scary place. But know that this can be resolved. All of these things can be resolved. Okay, all these things that I'm talking about absolutely can be resolved. And by all means get in touch with me and we can have a chat about how I can help you with all of these things. What we can also do is internalize stress reactions, which then can create a whole world of anxiety, depression, anger for us, because we don't know, we don't know if we've been through really fearful, really stressful situations. We don't know how to handle that. We've not been taught as a child how to handle that. We've just been in this terrified, or, maybe not as far as terrified, but scared position where we've felt real fear and real pain in a situation, depending on the situation that's happened. But this is where a lot of anxiety, depression, anger symptoms come from. A really big one for me was with the chronic stress that I was kind of running, because I was permanently in this kind of fight-flight mode. I then developed digestive problems and IBS, and had no idea, again, that this was a trauma response. It's basically my body just got to the point where it could not handle any more stress, and therefore I had these digestive issues. I used to also not eat very well as well, or eating kind of disordered eating going on in my world as well. So also that wouldn't have helped that matter. But number 3 is relationships. So if we're having relationship issues, if we see the same sort of pattern coming up in our relationships or dating, then there is highly likely to be some program that's locked in the subconscious. Again, quite easily can be related to some kind of trauma. Again, doesn't need to be the massive big traumas either. It could be those sort of seemingly smaller ones, like if your parents broke up and you've been through a divorce. There can be all sorts of emotional wounds that need healing from that point as well. So whilst that might not be what we would technically see as a trauma experience in terms of like abuse or anything like that, then that can still have an absolutely profound effect. And what we've got to remember is that we're looking back on these things now with adult eyes, with adult maturity. As a child, those things can be really scary for us to live through, and that sort of that severing of belonging. You're losing part of your tribe in that, you're losing part of your belonging. That can have massive effects. Anyway, back to the point. So with relationships, if you're seeing patterns, if you are attracting partners that do not treat you as important, they don't treat you as an equal, they don't respect you, then there will absolutely be some trauma links there for, that we could work on together to resolve and release. This is what my work is all about. We're not about managing, we're not about coping with any symptoms, we are about resolving and releasing them, okay? You can also come into a space as well with relationships where you might actually meet somebody who is so good, so loving, a really good person for you to have in your life, but you can't cope with it because you're not used to feeling that you deserve this love. You're not maybe used to being loved, unconditionally, wholly. You're maybe not used to having good people in your life, so that feels scary. That scares our subconscious and we push them away. Absolutely been there, thankfully not anymore. So have managed to bring a lovely, wonderful, good man into my life, but absolutely I was in that space. I did not understand. There was so much shame and guilt running around my system, and fear, just so much fight flight going on, that I just could not accept anybody, any good person, good man loving me. I couldn't receive support, I couldn't receive love, I couldn't trust in that process. Then we look at, if you have number 4, is looking at destructive behaviors. If we are running any behaviors that we know are absolutely not good for us, so maybe we're drinking too much, maybe we're a workaholic, maybe we're not resting enough, maybe we are just running ourselves into the ground, maybe we're not eating in a way that we know nourishes and nurtures our body. All of these things, we don't want to You know, if I said to you, do you want to not treat yourself kindly? You know, the answer would be absolutely not. You know, this can come into, you know, beating ourselves up, imposter syndrome, all of those sorts of things. If I said to you about, you know, do you not want to treat yourself kindly? Of course you would say, you know, no, I want to be kind to myself, but these things are running again because we, as a trauma response, because we've got some trauma locked in our subconscious. We do not believe at a really basic level that we deserve to be loved and nurtured, but we normally give and overgive to everybody else. So, you know, we may have kids in this position where we're treating ourselves really badly, yet we are looking after, nurturing everybody else in our lives, and possibly being a fixer for everybody else as well. Totally guilty of that when I was younger. You know, people pleasing, being that fixer, just doing everything for everybody else, which leads me on to number 5, actually. This feeling of overwhelming guilt. Okay, we are not put on this planet to feel guilty every single step of every single day, and that's absolutely where I was in my life as well. We are, you know, life is supposed to be joyful. Yes, you know, things are going to come up, but as a whole, life is supposed to be happy, harmonious, joyful, peaceful. We are not supposed to run this theme of guilt over and over and over every day for ourselves. You know, these are learnt lessons again. Potentially because of trauma, mostly because of trauma, certainly because of societal conditioning, and these are learnt patterns, so therefore we can unlearn them again. But these are really big cues that, you know, childhood trauma is potentially running in your adult life. You know, guilt plays a big part into people pleasing, and mum guilt. Oh my word, mum guilt. Absolutely. Live those, you know, I'm pretty sure most, you know, every mum does. But if it's overwhelming, there will, you know, I'm sure there's a natural part of that happening because we want to do the best by our kids, but you will also know if that is, you know, out of control for you as well. So if any of these 5 things are happening for you in your world at the moment, give me a shout. Let's talk through what's happening. Let me tell you how I can help you, again, so we can actually resolve these things for good rather than just manage them and cope with them. Okay, take care, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening.